What began as a routine late-night interview turned into television chaos when Gere erupted at Jimmy Fallon over a deeply personal question about his humanitarian work, sparking an explosive confrontation that has the entertainment industry talking. The Tonight Show studio buzzed with its usual pre-show energy as Gere settled into the guest chair, adjusting his jacket with the practiced ease of someone who had done countless interviews. The Hollywood legend appeared relaxed, even charming, as he exchanged pleasantries with Fallon during the commercial break. Audience members later described the atmosphere as surprisingly warm, with Gere genuinely laughing at Fallon's off-camera jokes about his recent Broadway return. But what followed shattered that comfortable dynamic, creating one of the most uncomfortable moments in late-night television history. As the cameras rolled and Fallon launched into his opening questions about Gere's latest film project, everything seemed perfectly normal. The actor spoke eloquently about his craft, his decades in Hollywood, and his continued passion for storytelling. The audience responded positively, laughing at appropriate moments and applauding his thoughtful reflections on the evolution of cinema. Fallon, seemingly emboldened by the smooth flow of conversation, began steering toward more personal territory. He asked about Gere's family life, spiritual journey, and business ventures. The actor handled each question with grace, offering just enough insight to satisfy viewers while maintaining his characteristic privacy. Then Fallon made his fatal mistake. "You know, Richard, you've been incredibly outspoken about human rights issues, particularly regarding Tibet and China," Fallon said, his tone shifting to something more probing. "But some people have questioned whether your activism is genuine or just another Hollywood publicity stunt. How do you respond to critics who say you're exploiting serious political issues for attention?" The studio fell silent. Even the usually animated audience seemed to sense the gravity of the question. Gere's expression changed immediately, his warm demeanor evaporating as his eyes narrowed with barely contained anger. "Excuse me?" Gere's voice was dangerously quiet, each word carefully measured. Fallon, either oblivious to the landmine he had stepped on or determined to push forward, continued with a condescending smile. "I mean, it's easy for wealthy celebrities to take stands on issues they don't really understand, right? What makes your activism different from, say, other actors who jump on political bandwagons?" The insult hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Gere's jaw clenched visibly as he processed the suggestion that decades of genuine humanitarian work, personal sacrifice, and unwavering commitment to causes he had supported long before they were fashionable could be dismissed so casually. "You have absolutely no idea what you're talking about," Gere said, his voice rising slightly, but still controlled. "I've spent 30 years of my life dedicated to these causes. I've put my career on the line, lost movie deals, been blacklisted by entire industries because of my beliefs." Fallon, perhaps realizing he had crossed the line but unable to back down gracefully, attempted to lighten the mood with a nervous laugh. "Hey, I'm just asking what everyone's thinking. No offense intended." "No offense, Gere." Composure finally cracked. "You just accused me of exploiting human suffering for publicity on national television. And you think a casual no offense makes that acceptable?" The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Cameras continued rolling as producers frantically debated whether to cut to commercial. Fallon's usual confident demeanor began to crumble as he realized the interview was spiraling out of control. "Look, I think there's been a misunderstanding here," Fallon stammered, his famous smile looking increasingly forced and desperate. "I was just trying to give you a chance to address the criticism." "What criticism?" Gere demanded, leaning forward. "From whom? Or did you just manufacture controversy to make your interview more interesting? Is this how you treat guests who've dedicated their lives to helping others?" The tension in the studio was suffocating. Band members looked at each other uncertainly, while audience members began pulling out phones to capture what was clearly becoming a career-defining moment for both men. Fallon's team scrambled behind the scenes, but their host was on his own. now facing one of Hollywood's most respected figures who was absolutely livid. But Gere wasn't finished. And what he said next ensured this confrontation would be replayed for years to come. "You want to know about exploitation, Jimmy?" Gere's voice cut through the studio like a blade. "Let's talk about how you've built your entire career on superficial interviews and manufactured moments. You've turned genuine human connection into a commodity, and now you have the audacity to question my integrity." The color drained from Fallon's face as the full weight of Gere's words hit him. The studio audience sat in stunned silence, witnessing what felt like a public execution. Even the band members had stopped their usual between-segment chatter, sensing they were watching something historic unfold. "That's not fair," Fallon protested weakly, his voice cracking slightly. "I'm just doing my job here." "Your job?" Gere's laugh was bitter and cold. "Your job is to interview guests with respect and professionalism. Instead, you've chosen to ambush me with baseless accusations about work that means everything to me. Do you have any idea what I've sacrificed for these causes?" The actor's voice grew stronger, more passionate, as years of frustration poured out. "I've been banned from China for speaking out about Tibet. I've lost millions of dollars in film deals. I've received death threats, been followed by government agents, had my phones tapped. And you sit there in your comfortable studio, having never risked anything in your privileged life, questioning whether my commitment is real." Fallon attempted to regain control, gesturing desperately toward his cards. "Richard, I think we should maybe move on to talking about your new project. Don't you dare try to change the subject now," Gere snapped, eyes blazing. "You opened this door, Jimmy. You wanted to make this about my character. So let's talk about character. What have you ever stood for? What principle have you ever defended when it wasn't safe or profitable?" The silence stretched painfully as Fallon struggled to respond. His usual arsenal of deflecting jokes and nervous giggles seemed completely inadequate against Gere's righteous fury. Sweat began to form on his forehead under the hot studio lights. "I support lots of causes," Fallon stammered, though even he seemed to realize how hollow that sounded. "Name one," Gere demanded. "Name one, 'cause you've supported that. Cost you something. One time you took a real stand instead of just posting safe, sanitized statements on social media." The challenge hung in the air unanswered. Behind the cameras, producers made frantic hand signals, but neither man paid attention to anything except their escalating confrontation. The audience was completely silent, as if afraid any sound might break the spell of this extraordinary moment. Fallon's desperation became increasingly apparent as he realized he was losing control of his own show. "Look, I didn't mean to offend you. Maybe we got off on the wrong foot here." "The wrong foot?" Gere's voice rose dangerously. "You didn't accidentally stumble into insulting me, Jimmy. You made a conscious choice to question my life's work on national television. You decided that my 3 decades of activism were worth less than a cheap shot for your ratings." The accusation struck home, and Fallon's face registered a mix of embarrassment and rising anger. For the first time in the confrontation, he pushed back with real venom. "You know what? Maybe you're being a little too sensitive here. This is late-night television, not a therapy session. If you can't handle tough questions, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews." The words were barely out of his mouth before Gere was on his feet, towering over the smaller host with an intensity that froze everyone in the studio. The composed, sophisticated actor had been replaced by a man pushed beyond his breaking point. "Tough questions." Gere's voice was deadly quiet now, more frightening than when he had been shouting. "You think what you did was journalism? You think that was professional interviewing? You're not Mike Wallace, Jimmy. You're not even a real talk show host. You're a game show comedian who got lucky, and tonight you've proven you're completely out of your depth." The insult landed like a physical blow. Fallon's face went white, then red, as the full implications of being so thoroughly dressed down on his own show sank in. His hands trembled slightly as he gripped his desk, and for a moment it looked like he might break down completely. But instead of backing down, something snapped inside Fallon. Years of criticism about his interviewing skills, whispered doubts about his abilities. And now this public humiliation combined into a moment of reckless fury that would define the rest of his career. "You know what, Richard?" Fallon's voice turned venomous as he stood behind his desk, abandoning any pretense of professionalism. "I'm sick of entitled celebrities like you thinking you're untouchable. You come on my show acting like some kind of saint, but everyone knows Hollywood activism is just ego-driven nonsense. You're not saving the world. You're feeding your own savior complex." The studio gasped collectively. Even the cameramen seemed shocked by their host's complete meltdown. Gere's eyes narrowed to slits as he processed not just the insult, but the revelation of Fallon's true character beneath the manufactured persona. "There it is," Gere said with cold satisfaction. "The real Jimmy Fallon, not the giggling, harmless entertainer you pretend to be, but a bitter, cynical man who can't stand that others actually care about something beyond themselves." Fallon was too far gone to stop now, his career imploding in real time as he doubled down on his attack. "At least I don't pretend to be something I'm not. You've made millions playing Hollywood heartthrob while lecturing everyone else about morality. How many private jets have you taken to Tibet, Richard? How many five-star hotels have you stayed in while connecting with the people?" The accusations were as desperate as they were unfounded. But they revealed something deeper and more disturbing about Fallon's worldview. His inability to conceive of genuine altruism spoke volumes about his own moral bankruptcy. Gere shook his head with a mixture of disgust and pity. "You really believe that, don't you? You're so incapable of authentic human connection that you can't imagine anyone else being genuine either. That's not cynicism, Jimmy. That's tragedy. Don't psychoanalyze me." Fallon screamed, his voice cracking with hysteria. "You don't know anything about me." "I know enough," Gere replied with devastating calm. "I know you're a man so insecure about your own lack of substance that you have to tear down others to feel relevant. I know you're willing to humiliate yourself and destroy your own career just to avoid admitting you were wrong." The truth of those words hit the studio like a thunderbolt. Everyone present could see that Gere had perfectly diagnosed Fallon's psychological breakdown. The host's face contorted with rage and shame as he realized he had been completely exposed in front of millions of viewers. "Get out," Fallon shrieked, pointing toward the exit. "Get out of my studio right now." Gere smiled coldly, straightening his jacket with deliberate composure. "Gladly. But before I go, let me give you some free advice. Jimmy, when you wake up tomorrow and realize what you've done here tonight, remember this moment. Remember that you had a choice between admitting a mistake and destroying everything you've built. And you chose destruction." The actor turned toward the stunned audience, his demeanor shifting back to the gracious professional they had expected all evening. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize that you had to witness this unfortunate display. You deserve better entertainment than watching a man implode on television." Gere walked toward the exit with dignified composure. Fallon made one final desperate attempt to salvage the situation. "You can't just walk out. We're in the middle of a show." Gere paused at the edge of the stage, turning back with a look of profound contempt. "The show ended the moment you decided to attack my life's work for ratings. What's happening now is just the aftermath." With those words, Hollywood royalty walked off the Tonight Show stage for the final time, leaving behind a broken host, a traumatized audience, and what would become one of the most analyzed moments in television history. The cameras kept rolling as Fallon stood alone behind his desk, the reality of his situation finally penetrating his rage-addled mind. His breathing was labored, his shirt soaked with sweat, and his hands shook uncontrollably as the magnitude of his professional suicide became clear. "We're going to commercial," he finally whispered to the cameras. But everyone knew the show was truly over. Within hours, clips of the confrontation had gone viral across every social media platform. The hashtag Fallon Meltdown trended worldwide, as viewers expressed their shock and applauded Gere's dignified handling of an impossible situation. Entertainment industry insiders were unanimous in their condemnation of Fallon's behavior. By morning, major sponsors had begun pulling their advertisements from The Tonight Show. NBC executives huddled in emergency meetings as ratings projections showed a catastrophic decline in viewership. The network released a terse statement expressing concern about the incident while promising a full review. Richard Gere, meanwhile, issued no public statements about the confrontation. He didn't need to. His actions on stage had spoken louder than any press release ever could. The entertainment industry rallied around him, with fellow celebrities and activists praising his restraint and dignity under unprecedented provocation. The incident became a watershed moment, sparking industry-wide discussions about respect, professionalism, and the responsibilities of platforms with massive reach. It served as a brutal reminder that true character is revealed not in comfortable moments, but when tested under pressure. For Jimmy Fallon, the confrontation marked the beginning of the end of his late-night reign, self-inflicted wound that no amount of damage control could heal. For Richard Gere, it became another chapter in a life dedicated to standing up for what he believes in, regardless of the cost.